It's finally here. We have all the pieces we need to put together our iMac Pro. We've got a new iMac Pro 5K display. We've got a new logic board complete with CPU and RAM that are, by the way, socketed and not soldered on. So, yeah, we covered that in part 2. And we have the one and only Louis Rossmann from Rossmann Group.
Time to learn how to put together an iMac, and as I say, you should never learn on your own stuff, always learn on somebody else's. Wait, no, you're supposed to learn on your own. Is that how this goes?
Who, like me, has never actually assembled an iMac Pro. So let's have some fun today, shall we? Sponsored, of course, by Mr. Rossmann's favorite tool company, iFixit.
The screwdrivers have a very nice personality.
iFixit is your one-stop shop for repair tools and guides for pretty much everything under the sun. You can check out the link to their ProTech Toolkit in the video description. So Anthony's laid everything out for us pretty much. We've got our fan component of the thermal solution. We've got all the picks and adhesive strips and everything that we should need. We've got their little prop-up thing for the doodad here that goes in there. And then, of course, is this your first time seeing an iMac Pro logic board in person?
This is my first time.
So why don't you kind of walk us through some of the things that are more and or less obvious? I mean, I actually have one right off the bat here.
Somebody's getting fired because the RAM is not soldered to the board.
For some reason, Apple's gone with this weirdo configuration with 5 DRAM chips per side. So normally you would have 4 or 8, and the 5th one is for ECC, that's error checking, and that's a feature of the Xeon W processor that's in there. But why wouldn't they just put all of them on the one side? Why would they do a dual-sided DIMM for this?
Maybe to get more on a single DIMM.
These are just 8 gig DIMMs.
Maybe they planned on it, but then that person got fired because using too much memory would result in a not efficient power usage. Wait, no, that was the excuse they used in the Retina.
I mean, a lot of people have asked like why they might have gone with socketed memory rather than soldering the memory on, because we all know that Apple's sort of MO here is making as few components on the board upgradable by the end user as possible.
And the CPU is socketed too.
And the CPU
that's another person that's going to get fired.
So I figured it out. Someone at Apple was just like, you know what? If we want to deliver enough configurations without spending a bunch of money for the sole purpose of making things less upgradable for the user, sockets make a lot of sense. What an idea, Apple!
And if the processor fails, you don't have to buy a new board. And what's the cost of that board?
Except
like
that
8,000?
you do.
12,000?
You do.
No way.
Apple only sells the logic board as a complete unit.
What?
With the CPU and the RAM already in it.
But what if you only have a bad CPU?
Because even though they're socketed, they still treat it like a single unit.
So what happens if you have a bad RAM stick?
Okay, that one I don't know. But I know that when we had to buy the new logic board, we had to send back our CPU and RAM if we wanted to qualify for replacement pricing, which there's still a chance. I heard from our contact who got us this, so there's still a chance we can get replacement pricing on it.
So you have to send back everything, and if you don't send back everything, you don't get replacement pricing, but you get charged twice the actual price of it, which is already 4 times the price that it should cost on any other computer.
Yes.
Well, go Apple. So those are the standard SSDs you could buy on Newegg, right?
I mean, in their defense, their SSDs do perform pretty well, so I'll give them that. But a lot of people asked us, well, why were you guys opening up an iMac Pro in the first place? It's not meant to be opened. The reason we were opening it was because we wanted to shed some light on the cooling solution that Apple is using for up to an 18-core processor and a Vega 64 GPU. Just looking at it tells us everything we need to know about how much this sucker is going to thermal throttle. And in order for us to take our thermal throttling results and sanity check them, this is why we were opening it, because we're a review channel. And we know that opening up the product is not something that everyone's gonna do, but this is a pro product in a professional environment where you might actually have technicians on staff to help people through both software and hardware issues. It is my expectation that you would be able to use or service a professional machine and you would be able to get the parts that you need. Is that an unreasonable thing?
I think it's very unreasonable that you expect that you should be able to clean the dust out of it 3 years from now when it's filled with junk and runs 30 Celsius hotter. When they say that you're not supposed to open it, it's not designed to be opened, I can understand that to an extent, but wouldn't you want to open it so that you can clean it 3 years from now? Because so many of these old machines, they wind up dying when the graphics chips start running 20 and 30 Celsius hotter.
Yep.
And this design, if you blow compressed air in there, it's just going to wind up blowing the dust around the machine. It doesn't remove it.
Here, what we can do is we can kind of line this up, and this is something that's very difficult to do if you don't actually open it up and have a look at it. So if you were to blow dust, or if you were to blow air through this very thoughtfully designed baffle here, so that you don't get as much noise from the fan, I guess, which is neat.
If you open any of these that are more than 3 years old, I would be surprised if the fan even spins, just based on how much dust are in here after a few years. So you would want to open it just to be able to blow it out, and you can't do that in this machine. So it makes sense that somebody would want to open this, if not now, then a few years from now, if they want it to last at least. And Apple wants it to last, right?
Is there anything about this main board that makes it special? It does have a GPU built right into it, which is either a feature or a drawback, depending on how you look at it.
I mean, it's a good board. It has, to some extent, it has 4 Thunderbolt ports, 4 USB ports, Ethernet. I mean,
10 gig LAN.
It does use the same USB-C muxing that the touch bars did, and I remember with the touch bars when I tried to use a third-party dongle rather than the original Apple dongle, it didn't work, and the original Apple dongle was like $80.
I mean, this Aquantia chipset, to buy a card with this on it is about $100.
I can understand how, if it comes with a graphics card and it's specifically custom designed for this machine, like I could see how this board would cost, yeah, like I would say this is a solid $800, $900 board.
Okay, cool, but not $4,000.
What?
That's how much the non-replacement pricing is, if you break the warranty void if removed seals on it. And when we priced out the iMac Pro, we actually found that compared to an apples to apples PC with a Xeon W, like trying to get feature and performance parity, it was actually pretty darn similar. So it's only when you want to try to get a replacement part and you don't have the untouched by non-authorized technicians like yourself pricing that you really get
owned.
Rammed.
Yeah.
Owned, sure. That's a,
yeah, like
that's a more PG way of putting it. I didn't think I'd bring this guy on and he'd be the one toning my language down.
Like the entire machine, it's not necessarily that much of a ripoff considering the form factor that you get, and when you do actually price it with a display that's for a PC that would be equal, it actually isn't a terrible deal spec-wise. It's just if you ever have anything go wrong with it ever, then you're really screwed.
I do think that Apple could do more to design things not to fail. And when you look at this cooling solution, the inability to clean out the dust, you look at the 500 watt power supply, like this to me is common sense stuff. When I initially set out to build a computer, there's not a whole friggin' lot to it these days. It's like putting together Lego. You got your form factor, which Apple does a great job of. You got your acoustics, and you got your thermals. That's step 1 of building a computer. Make sure that it's not gonna overheat and it's not gonna be super loud. Oh, and don't use a crappy power supply so that it doesn't blow up in 2 years.
I'm just surprised by the heatsink because I know that in many of their machines they focus on it being quiet, which is a good thing. They want the machine to not make noise, but if you want it to not make noise, you would want a larger heatsink, not a smaller one. And what they've done with a lot of the newer machines, they took the 2013-14 design, which is actually a really nice design, except the fan just doesn't turn on for another 20C.
Okay, so should we get started?
Then they get to figure out that I don't know how it goes together.
Yeah, I know. Now neither of us looks like an expert. Yeah, I know. So I've done an iMac 5K, but I've never done an iMac Pro, like in terms of disassembly and reassembly. Have you done an iMac 5K?
No.
Oh,
I
really?
think the last time I reassembled an iMac was 2012 or 13. And most of what we do is liquid damage repairs, but you gotta be pretty special to spill water on here. Yeah, like water typically goes down, not sideways.
You'd have to be drinking water over a bare board sitting on a table in order
you have to just like fountain it into your iMac and hope it falls to the screen.
Or someone has to say something really funny.
The one thing that sucks with this form factor, at least for the older ones, is that if you want to replace the hard drive, you have to remove the screen to get to the drive, and the screen cable is short, so when people take the screen out, they don't realize that they have to hold the screen on their chest. They don't do that, they just take the screen out like this. They wind up ripping the screen connector right off the board.
Okay, so do we want to put this, no, no.
That's fine.
Just up it should be okay, right?
All right.
Well, hold on a second, because we've got brackets in here called like Wi-Fi and stuff. So I want to make sure that
This has Ethernet though, right?
That's one thing that I have to say I love about Apple. They're wireless. It's just, they're the only ones that I'm aware of that do a 3x3x in a notebook. Because everyone else is using the mini PCIe standard that is just not physically large enough to do a 3x. So this looks like some kind of sense for the power supply, I guess. Okay, so hold on, we probably gotta put this lead in. Oh, okay, that one comes around as well. Okay, all right. Oh. Okay, please.
Over here.
Yeah, this guy's blocking you. Hold on. That's lifting up some kind of cover that probably serves some kind of purpose. Here, hold on. Okay.
It covers coils.
Yep, covers things that you shouldn't touch, I guess. Let me see if I can kind of guide you in here.
Stay out, cables.
You really go ham. Like, it's funny, because I get a lot of flack for just kind of like going for it with stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as we know, this board works, so please do be very careful.
Oh, God. No pressure.
Why did I fly him in from New York to do this for me?
So I could learn.
There we go. Now we're getting in there.
Aha.
There we go.
Bada bing.
Okay.
All right. So it's like being a dentist. It's like say ah.
Yes.
Say
ah. Yeah. Okay. Do we want to screw it in first, maybe? Or no? We just
you should see if it works before you screw it in. It's bad luck to screw it in before you see if it works.
So my thing is I don't close the panel first, but I'm willing to screw in a board. I'll put in at least a couple screws because I don't like motherboards sliding around on standoffs.
Oh yeah.
Can I put in 2 screws?
Okay.
Okay. Stressing out here. One thing about working on a PC like this that legitimately should require certification and legitimately is dangerous for the average person is the fact that it has exposed leads on the capacitors on their power supplies. No, there's no, there's nothing that goes on here. It's just like this.
Holy.
That is extremely dangerous. You could die. This is nothing, this is no tongue-in-cheek, haha, Apple or anything like that. Just, I've never actually seen another finished goods product like this with an exposed power supply like that. And as far as I can tell, the only reason they've done it is so that they can use the cooler unit here to cool the power supply without it having its own fan, which would, because of the thin form factor, be quite small and therefore whiny.
I'm surprised they didn't put at least some sort of cage over it that happened to be grounded, so that if somebody was going in to, let's say, clean their fan, they don't do that. Because this is one of those things where I like to joke in my videos, but I would not want to touch that, and there is a good chance of somebody opening this and actually hurting themselves.
Even if it's unplugged.
Yeah, because those capacitors will stay charged for a long time afterwards.
Long time, sometimes months or even years. You don't mess around with that stuff. Now, actually, on the subject of these things being exposed, a lot of people have asked us what exactly happened, because the way that we showed our iMac Pro failure was in the form of like a reenactment, because obviously the camera wasn't rolling while we dropped the display.
I thought it was.
Yeah, those sparks, those
liar.
After Effects drawn sparks, very realistic.
Liar.
I know, we deceived everyone.
I believed in you.
So what actually happened was, when Anthony was removing the display, he bridged something in here and it caused a spark, which startled him and caused him to drop the display. That was what actually happened. And because the spark was on the motherboard, that's why from the very beginning we have deceived no one. We knew we definitely had a broken display, but we knew we also possibly had a dead motherboard and therefore by extension, a dead power supply. Actually, the spark was off the power supply, wasn't it?
Yes.
So, you know what's funny? A shield would have prevented all of this.
The shield would have prevented all
How
of this.
interesting. So sorry, the spark on the power supply. So you know when you short out a power supply, you can kind of kill almost anything downstream. And because on this particular machine, the power for everything runs through the motherboard, it was probably gonna burn something on the motherboard before it carried through to something else. So that was where our conclusion came from. We knew we definitely had a dead screen because it was cracked. We knew that we potentially had a dead power supply and a dead motherboard, but that our other components probably worked. With that said, I've seen a lot of shorts occur in my day that have not resulted in dead hardware. Or I've seen them partially fail. Like, oh, well, now that USB port doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, if you send 12 volts to the 5-volt rail, your machine's dead. If you send 12 volts to ground, you just saw a big spark, but it's nothing that's gonna actually kill it.
Wow, you know, those viewers are right. This is really complicated. Because I mean, the whole thing, like, oh, it's like a supercar. You saw those comments, right? It's not designed to be, taken apart and put together. And I'm kind of like, well, then how does Apple, take it apart and put it together? Because they can, they just wouldn't.
Or can they?
So here's another thing that would definitely require training. The screws for the power supply and for just generally mounting the motherboard are threaded the same as far as I can tell, but they should not be confused because the power supply ones have these washers on them. And they are actually designed, we were talking about this off camera, how does the power supply connect to the motherboard? It's actually through screw connections here. So these ones with the little kind of mark next to them that looks like it's a little oval-shaped mark, those ones use the silver screws, and then everything else uses the black ones. That is a bit of a trick, and you would need to be very careful with something like that. Oh, not that one. These two. That moment when you bring in like a celebrity repair technician, and it turns out maybe you should have gotten a real repair technician, you know?
Yeah.
In all seriousness though, this is not very difficult, is it?
This takes about 5 minutes.
Should an Apple authorized service provider, like is there any justifiable reason why they shouldn't be able to just stock replacement parts for an operation like this and be able to turn a board swap around for a customer in a day?
The reason that they don't want them to have parts in stock is because they're afraid of them ending up on the open market or on eBay or being resold. Like that data recovery tool that I had bought for the new Touch Bar MacBooks. I got it from some likely authorized service center that was selling all of them on the side. The downside of it is that if the parts are not stocked, the customer has to wait 1 to 3 weeks to get it in. If you tell somebody it's going to take longer than 2 to 5 days, they just walk out of the store.
This is an entirely different story. Imagine for a second that I'm not some YouTuber, also a celebrity technician. You know, imagine that I bought this $5,000 machine so that I could run my, home graphic design business. Imagine that someone told me this is going to cost more to repair than I initially spent on it. How does that make any sense? The thing that made me most furious was the people acting like that argument made any sense. That a machine could be a total write-off when not every component of it was dead.
Yeah, and no broadcast facility is going to allow that. Any sort of recording studio, any sort of video or news editing room, they expect that there be virtually no downtime. They're going to have a machine swapped in a place, and they expect to be able to repair this because they're using it for real work.
Not to mention for a reasonable price. I expect when I buy a replacement piece of something, whether it's a car or a vacuum cleaner, that if I were to buy every piece of it and assemble it myself, it should cost a little bit more. But I don't expect that if I were to buy all the pieces as replacement parts, that the machine would cost literally double, even if I'm putting it together myself. That doesn't make any sense. Anyone making the argument that Apple can't sell it to me for cheaper because they got to make money, their business, is clearly not doing the math. Because if Apple couldn't afford to sell me this board for around $1,000, then they couldn't afford to build this computer. I think I doofed on this one. So the Wi-Fi thing is also a little bit tricky. You got to slide it into 4 little notches on this shield right here.
SD card area thing.
The card reader is over here somewhere. So it's over here somewhere. Oh, it's to hold that doodad in.
I've done worse.
Okay, let's not turn this into a competition of which of us has done worse, because that's not going to be, that's not...
Setting the Thunderbolt circuit on fire.
We were talking about credibility earlier, that's not going to help either of us.
The thing is, sometimes I'll read out the letter that somebody sent in with their machine. So they'll know, okay, he's working on mine. And then when I'm streaming it, they'll see like me saying, okay, this is just for Thunderbolt, but screw this. And I'll just take the solder iron and go vink, vink, vink. And then he'll get a call later saying, excuse me, was that my machine that he just ripped the Thunderbolt USB and Wi-Fi circuitry off? And then I'll have to explain to him, no, he's joking. He's going to put that back when he gets it to turn on. And then he'll like walk over to me and say, did you stream knocking all that stuff off? You watched these videos before you sent it here. You must have been expecting, like, you know what you're getting. It's not like it's false advertising.
See, this is like me and my wife. Like, I'll make some sort of like really offensive off-color joke, and I'm just like, hun, I mean, we were dating for 6 or 7 years before we got married.
You knew what you were buying.
You knew, yeah, that's right.
But yeah, when people watch the live streams of their stuff getting fixed, I can only imagine how stressful that is because of the show that I put on for it.
What, you're saying everything you see on TV is not, an accurate reflection of real life? You put on a show?
No way.
I think the real takeaway here is that if we can handle this, Apple's store probably could have handled this.
All right, let's see if we get fan spin.
It may not actually do that. There's a lot of stuff wired into the display, not just DisplayPort.
Fan spin.
Oh, we did.
We're done. Yeah, so I can go home.
We have to put the panel back on. That's the whole point.
Fan spin.
That's what was broken.
Fan spin.
So this is the one actually like special thing that you need, and it's a part that iFixit sells. If you were to take apart and put back together an iMac Pro, other than that, you just need like a screwdriver, a couple of Torx bits, nothing really special. Like, you'd be surprised how many repairs you only really need a pretty basic toolkit for.
This is the hardest part of this repair, actually, is finding the proper adhesive. And this goes back almost 10 years with this stuff, is that if you can open it up, you can, it's putting it back together that's difficult.
Yeah.
Because if you just go to Home Depot and try to find adhesive that fits, it's just gonna fall right out.
Oh, they sent 2, just in case they knew who they were.
iFix does sell really good adhesive toolkits for these machines, I'll say.
Well, no, I was saying they sent 2. They clearly knew who they were dealing with.
Oh, yeah.
They expected me to screw it up once. We brought up the guide for putting on the strips. You really don't want to screw this up because they're one-time use. Oh, holy crap. They've got like 8 steps for each strip. They really walk you through the steps there. I think I can handle this.
Makes one of us.
I ended up picking the bitch side. It should be noted that there's not actually that much pressure on you because we are going to take it apart again for sure to do our iMac Pro repair guide, which is what we were trying to do in the first place.
I'm offended at being in a video with foul language.
It's so frustrating to me that Apple tries to create this mystique around how difficult these machines are to repair. And the really frustrating thing is that it works. We had these comments from people who think that it's more than printed circuit boards, capacitors, wiring, and stickers.
I think a lot of people have bought into the idea that this is kind of a utopia. And in some ways it is, the software is easier to use, it didn't crash as much when Vista was out, it looks nice,
Did you put this on?
Maybe, kind of, sort of.
Lewis! Clearly I don't watch your videos.
There are at least 1,000 MacBook Airs out there with the adhesive applied like that, and they're still fine. 4.5 stars, baby. Yeah, they think it's a utopia, so that if anything goes wrong, it has to be their fault, or it has to be your fault. It couldn't be that they just did something wrong. So people wind up denying their own experience when they have a problem. I remember seeing this one thread in 2011 where so many people were saying, "You're wrong. This machine doesn't run too hot. You must have been doing something wrong. You must have got dust in it. You got a defect.
You must have been running it too hard."
Yeah, and ironically, on their own page it says, 70% faster at video editing than last year's model.
And all you were trying to do is edit some video. Oh, I screwed it up. Oh, I really missed.
That's what fingernails are for.
No, hold on. I got this. No, don't want it folded. You definitely don't want 2 layers of it, but if it's a little bit. Ah, shoot. No, that's really bad, actually. I gave you so much for your application of the first couple, and then I screwed up this last one. Dang it. That's karma for you. Do you want to do the ribbons, and I'll hold the screen?
Yeah, let's move it closer to the edge.
Yeah, let's actually do that.
And now to pretend that we didn't forget to plug the microphone in. For some reason, they use that connector for the webcam on the MacBook, so I thought that was a webcam as a part of the screen.
By the way, for those watching at home, this is the smarter way to handle these recessed screws on the cooler. You just put them in the rubber grommet first, then screw them in. This is all going very smoothly.
Yes, nothing is broken yet.
That we know.
It's best if you have somebody hold the screen while you're plugging things in so that you don't drop the screen.
Or there's always the chest method.
Or use your chest, because it's very easy to drop this.
That's the manly way. Yeah, you have to have bigger pecs than me for it to really work very well.
I have more man boobs than pecs myself. It's good to use your nails rather than on the edge of the connector over here. So you're gonna see it's kind of shaped like an L. And don't be afraid to just push it in on the edges. Don't try to push the whole thing in at once, that's very difficult. And then you can plug in the screen connector without breaking it.
And we'll try not to drop anything in the power supply this time.
Famous last words.
Moment of truth, come on over here, Brandon. I want people to know we're not faking anything. There's no reenactments.
So we got fan spin, now do we get Apple logo?
Hey!
Apple logo!
All right, that's a good sign.
I was hoping you would do it with
That
the
was
right
a
hand.
very well, I'm holding the screen with my good hand.
Part 4.
Crash! Should we go like the Top Gun style high five? Do you know the high five they do in Top Gun? Here, you gotta go over here.
This is gonna end with the screen being dropped.
Okay. Yeah!
Fan spin.
So I think that's pretty much it. Massive thank you to absolutely everyone who was involved in this. Thank you to Anthony for breaking our iMac Pro, because otherwise we never would have really started this conversation about right to repair and Apple's policies here. We would have had no way of knowing that it was going to be so difficult to repair a professional grade machine. Thanks to our community who really stepped up and helped us out getting this thing fixed for a reasonable price. Well, we can throw our total bill of materials up here compared to what Apple would have charged us. We can do that, right? Huge thanks to Louis Rossmann for showing up and helping me reassemble the iMac Pro here. It was a lot of fun. Thanks to iFixit, of course, for providing us with the adhesive strips and the tools we need, as well as their awesome online guides for disassembly and reassembly of your electronics, and of course for sponsoring this third installment of this video series. And thank you to you guys for watching. Guys, if you disliked this video, you can hit that button, but if you liked it, hit
contains a built-in screen reader called VoiceOver. If you know how to use VoiceOver, press Command F5.
hit like, get subscribed, and maybe consider checking out where to buy the stuff we featured at the link in the video description. Also down there is our merch store, which has cool shirts just like this one, and our community forum, which you should definitely join.
Can you buy screens and boards to Apple products on your merch store?
No, you cannot. Extra for the people who stayed to the end. Yes, we are aware of the serialization process for Apple mainboards. Don't ask any questions, but this does work with FaceTime and iMessage and all that stuff. Don't worry about it, but you might run into issues if you were to actually try to just buy a random board on eBay.